Welcome to the Money Act podcast, where we talk about money and movies. My next guest here is a longtime friend and colleague, Marc Horsfield. Marc, welcome.
Thank you.
And Marc, what places have we worked together? That was Rhythm and Hue Studios, Vancouver was the first time we met.
Yep.
And then Method from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the last time, actually.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, you have started your own company.
Yep.
And this is Odd Studios. I'll just pop it up here as well as the end of the show. This is where you can reach out to Marc. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your history first, and then we'll move into your business.
Sure. I grew up in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and in the 90s, I pestered the only local visual effects studio I could find so much until they eventually gave me a job. I think they caved. I would ask a bunch of people. I would go around to these conferences and things and find out how to get into the industry, and everyone said, "Be a programmer. Go into programming." So I did that, and I didn't want to be a programmer, so eventually they gave me a job. But that's it, really. And then early 2000s, moved to LA, because in the early 2000s, that's where the industry was.
All right.
Worked at Side Effects for a bit, worked at Digital Domain for a bit, then Sony ImageWorks for a while.
At which point, I've known you as an effects artist, really an effects supervisor when we met.
Yes.
Is that where you went effects the whole time?
Yep. Yeah. In the 90s, like everyone, I wanted to be an animator. And because I got a job and they said, well, you have a technical background, so here's Houdini. You're an effects artist now. And that was, and then I was gainfully employed as an effects artist for the whole time. It was just never a downtime for effects artists.
Right.
Yeah.
And you moved from then Southern California up to Vancouver around the time we worked at Rhythm, or?
No, so we promised our family when we left the country that we would only be gone for a few years, and 7 years later we were still in LA. But we decided at that point, this was around 2008, so just before the financial crisis hit, we had decided to move back to South Africa, so that our kids could be closer to their grandparents, and and that was fine. We were there for a couple of years, and because it's South Africa, the financial crisis took a while to get to us. But a couple of years later, I lost my job in South Africa, and then we had to move to Australia. That was the next job for Dr. D on Happy Feet 2, and that only lasted a year. And then from there, we came to Vancouver, and that's where we've been. So 2012. So from 2008, 2012, we lived in 4 different countries, almost 4 different continents. But it was
you exemplify your whole family moving around as the nomad visual effects artist. Yeah.
That was always my rule. It was like, if I go somewhere, they're all coming with me. So that happened. Yeah.
And you've been in Vancouver now for 11 years?
11 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And the whole family loves it. It's beautiful. Beautiful area.
Well, loves it. We're here.
There's no perfect place.
It's a beautiful place. It's wonderful. I think post-COVID or during COVID.
Yeah.
COVID was a weird time where you kind of look around and you go, "Is this where I want to spend the rest of my life?"
It really was that.
So yeah.
Yeah.
We're now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that for us as well. Well, why don't we talk about Odd Studios? So I remember when we were at Rhythm and Hughes, went down at bankruptcy. It whittled down to just 25 of us. You and I were one of those 25.
Yep.
And we started just kind of, the new company bought us out of bankruptcy, and they didn't really have a plan. We were kind of waiting for, the work to come in or shift up to us. And we started working on some things like ride films and stuff like that. But during our downtime, the 25 of us would get together and we'd pitch ideas and story ideas. In fact, we would do these animatics and we would pitch them to each other, and whichever one won, we would all work on that. And it was like little short films. And in fact, your daughter wrote one or came up with an idea, and we ended up making that into a short film.
Yeah.
And I think Pixar copied us because they ended up with that the two mountains falling in love. Yeah. Ours was first. But was that the impetus? Because I think you also said that in South Africa, you thought about starting your own company as well.
Yeah.
So that was probably the impetus of wanting to start a company. But did that experience at Rhythm, where we were kind of throwing ideas around, did that kind of push you towards that, or other things happen that made you just go, I've got to do this now?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always had the desire to rule my own life, I suppose, in a way,
Yep.
where I kind of chafe under decisions that other people make. That's the polite way of saying it. I'm not really. I can work with a huge amount of people, right? I get along well with almost a lot of people, but yeah, it was sort of this desire, like, well, I feel like I can do a better job at this. I can do this well. So that was in Cape Town. That was a thought that I had, never, came to pass. And then, the R&H going bankrupt thing that's where the seeds were really planted, I think, for me to do something. And then while I was at Method, when you came over, then we continued the short story kind of like production thing, which then that seed kind of grew and grew until eventually I was just, I thought, well, why can't we do this? But to go back to the R&H thing, I think there were a couple of things at R&H. One was the short things that we did, but also being owned by the new parent company.
Right.
I think there was a period where they had a trailer that they were trying to get done for a feature animation, and they brought it to us, and they were, they had like rough boards or something, and then our anim soups and the R&H crew that were left took it and were like, well, this isn't that good, and they kind of made it better, and they recut it and they re-edited and reanimated this thing, add to R&H quality, and then the owners took it to, I don't know, the film circuits and sold it. And it's funny because the more I think about it, I'm not sure if this is just urban legend or if someone told me it was a rumor or if it actually happened. But I heard that they took it on the film circuit, just this trailer, and they went and sold it, and they got a $15 or $20 million worth of investment, and then promptly took this thing back to India and produced it there, which I thought was sort of an egregious thing. But but yeah, so that was kind of this. All these little pieces came together, and I was like, well, other people have started studios where they make feature animation, so why can't we? And so that was kind of the genesis of it all. And then the design of the studios, we use visual effects as the fuel that drives the engine, and we're building the engine while we're driving the car, as every visual effects there. But yeah, so that'll be the fuel that'll pay the bills, and we'll build a full-length feature anim pipeline. We'll develop our own internal stories. We'll develop pitches and hopefully find some investment. That was the original genesis. Now I'm like, wait, how can we fund this ourselves? Because
Well, I think you did it right, at least in the beginning, to start off with a company that can actually make money, as bringing money in and churning out products for people. I think you did it the right way, because sometimes, as I've seen, where somebody gets a huge injection of money, not really having any of that built, and then there's this expectation that you just hit the ground running immediately. And I think doing it the way you did proves out that you've got a pipeline, a working company, and then you can take that next step. And so I think that's great. And I love that that's the ultimate goal is owning your own IP, because I think that's also where it's at. A lot of us as digital artists, especially, or digital production like myself, don't get any sort of back end deal like the above the line people do on set. And I think that's really, if you can figure out a way to have a piece of that IP action, you're doing it right, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the thoughts was that we all got into this industry for a reason.
Right.
And the reason was we
make our movies.
Yeah, we love telling stories. we love being creative and doing those kinds of things. So one of the the designs of the culture of our studio is get everyone in, give everyone a voice, allow everyone the opportunity to speak or pitch ideas or tell stories or whatever they need to do, and even to the extent of where we will. The design really is to allow people creative freedom to experiment with different avenues of creativity. So just to try and keep their passion alive, really, and not
Of course.
squelch
Yeah.
it under the yoke of visual effects.
I think that's what makes Pixar so great, is because they
Yeah,
have that same type
yeah,
of culture where you can bring ideas to the big wigs, and I think that's another thing that um, you and I probably saw firsthand at Rhythm when we did start throwing ideas around, is that those ideas don't just come from a few people. There are a lot of really good ideas that
yeah,
if you just get a group of creative people together, and I think there's a lot of artists in our business in visual effects, animation, gaming,
Mhm.
that have a lot of great ideas. They just need a platform to get their ideas heard. And I think
Yeah,
you're right,
yeah.
fostering that
Mhm.
culture, you just need to be creative, and that's what.
Yeah, you kind of. I mean, one of the downsides, not the downsides, but the hard part is one of the things, the thoughts, I guess, that I have in my mind is that ideas are cheap, right? There are
Right.
a lot of people who have a
Yeah.
lot of good ideas, which is great, and
Yep.
finding a way to percolate sort of the best ideas to the top is one. That's step one. Step
Right.
two is then producing that thing, which is there's very few companies
That's
or
the hard
places
part.
in the world that can actually take something from an idea to a fully executed product, really.
Yeah.
Um, so so that's where we come in. That we're like, okay, well, we'll provide the infrastructure, the support, the licenses, the pipeline, and everything else to get your idea from just something in your head out up onto the screen so that people can see it.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that part is definitely the hard part, and
yeah.
the money is probably the hardest part, getting the money to to fund something like that. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, having the ability to take action
Yeah.
on that stuff, because
Yeah.
I've heard so many people, I've got all these ideas, and then, well, what are you doing with them?
Yeah.
They
Right.
just sit
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And it's just to kind of bring this into the money piece. Is when I first read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I've met a lot of people who've read that book but
Mhm.
haven't actually taken action on anything that he said. It, like, changed their thinking, but then nothing. The biggest piece is to take action on that. Like,
Yeah.
take action on what you learned. And
Yeah.
so if you're able to cultivate this, I think that'd be huge, to be able to take. You've got these ideas. You've got now a team. You're building this team, building this company,
Yeah.
and then to take that to the next step to get it done. Obviously, it takes some big funding to do a. Are you talking CG feature length or
Yep.
short film size?
Well,
CG feature?
we're doing shorts now. We have 2 shorts in production.
Oh, cool.
And then we have a feature film in development. But yeah, we're ultimately it's going to be a full 90-minute animated feature.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And are you thinking like taking these short films to pitch them around, like it's a finished product, you can pitch it around the film circuit, the festival circuit, or get it to investor hands and then turn that short into a feature? Is that the concept?
Yeah. So for the shorts that we have are independent.
Mm-hmm.
One of them has the kind of the potential growth to be turned into a series, an animated series.
Mm-hmm.
10 to 12-minute episodes of these 2 characters just going on zany adventures. It's pretty fun.
Cool.
But yeah, the full-length feature, we were intending to make a trailer. So kind of like the RNH days, we take it, we have a story, we have a cut-down trailer of fully produced, lit, animated, rendered with all the assets and everything, and then take that on the circuit, see if we can find investors.
Very cool.
But post-COVID, I don't even know. This is where we are right now, which is the distribution models have changed, the financing models have changed. Like, everything is just turned on its head. And so, before, you had to go to a studio, they had to buy into the thing, they had to you had to sign a bunch of contracts, then they would fund the production of the movie, and then you would lose all rights to that thing
right
in perpetuity. But now there's so many different distribution channels that if we can make something, we can get it out there. And
yeah.
So,
yes. I think that's you're right, and I think that's just in its infancy, where it's going to be a platform-based model where you can actually participate in the back end. In fact, I know Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have started a new company end of last year called Artist Equity, so that of course, it focuses on set people for artists that can make back end money on on projects that they work on. It doesn't include us in the digital world, of course, as far as I know, anyway.
Yeah.
Which, but
Yeah.
if there's something like what you're talking about, if there's a way for even digital creators in some small form initially to start participating in, that would be huge. And I think that platform idea, whether it's an epic that is up and coming and trying to dive into the film space outside of just gaming, and there's a whole bunch of them coming out. So I think that's definitely going to be the route.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's, we're not alone in this, in identifying this, that the world has changed. The world changed, at least the content world changed when the streamers came online, and now, and now it's changed, I think, yet again. With all the platforms and all the potential avenues, and also Epic, as you say, coming in, right, where now if you make a bunch of assets that can be for your film, you can also use them for your game, and you can use them for alternate venues of monetizing things. Yeah. So we're not alone in this. I don't think anyone knows what the actual answer is yet. So
yeah, and there could be some sort of tie-in with the whole money system as well. I mean, I know there's massive ups and downs in crypto and NFTs that you hear about a lot, but there is something there as far as I don't know if it's Ether or if it's something like Hashgraph or something, where you can actually tokenize a real physical asset. These are digital assets we're talking about. Film, I mean, it's perfect for this world, but you could even tokenize physical assets in this new world where you've got the Apple goggles, and you can actually take images of a physical thing and it turns into a CG thing, and you can basically take a snapshot and create value out of this asset. And so with digital films, of course, that it's already digital, there's something there where you might be able to piece up ownership of a film asset or even assets within a film. And so how, a big actor like Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or whoever is big now these days, they maybe now artists, animators, or all that asset creators for a character can now make money or residuals like an actor would. There's a lot of possibilities, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot. One of our artists had something similar. They sold NFTs, and then they funded the creation of a short, and then they were going to go further before the crypto market tanked.
Just smashed. That's the scary part about that market.
And it was, I mean, it was a really good idea. I think the problem is the legalities of it get kind of fuzzy pretty quickly. Who has ownership of the products? What are the stated goals? What are the the end results? And so I think that's where we are, is when everyone's trying to piece together what the new thing is and then how it all works.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of converging new tech coming together, and AI being the massive one right now. No, he can't have a conversation without talking about that now. And speaking of that, where are you seeing? Is your company dabbling in anything right now that's on the edge, cutting edge right now?
I mean, we're using AI. A year ago, it's funny. A year ago, we were doing face replacements. Deep fake stuff, and we had an opportunity, I guess, to sort of invest heavily in that front, which I'm glad we didn't, because that's all going to be gone soon. It's all going to be AI.
With all the strikes going on, that's probably
just all the hard training and stuff. But it's, I don't know, AI, it's like a double-edged sword that cuts you even if you don't pick it up. It's one of these things, like if you use it, it feels bad. If you don't use it, you're going to get cut by it. It's going to hurt you. Right. You really have no choice. We have to kind of be.
You have to use it and try.
We have to figure out where it's used. And where the balance is, because if we're not, everybody else is.
Right.
And there's people out there with less sort of morally inclined or ethically inclined that are going to be using it to, great abandon, really. And if we're not even in the game, then we can't even compete with that. So,
that's right. I think whatever people say about Elon Musk, but he's like warning everybody, we need to slow down on this, but okay, no one else is slowing down here, so I got to just keep moving in that space, because if he doesn't, he'll be crushed. So you can say stop all you want, but there's no stopping this.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, for us, it's, it's finding the balance. It's finding where it's valuable, where it's not valuable. For us, people are the highest value, really. So we're not going to just ham-fisted slam it in here and start firing people because AI can do their job now. That's not what we're about.
Right.
I don't know if you've actually tried to use ChatGPT to write plays or anything.
It's helpful if you have something already written and you just say, hey, can you make this any better? And then maybe you'll have some sentence that comes out that's okay. Starting from scratch, and maybe it kind of gets your brain thinking, hey, I want to write something about this, and it just kind of gets the juices flowing a bit quicker.
Totally. And that's what we're using it for, right? The genesis of like brainstorming. Sitting in a room with 20 people and brainstorming a bunch of ideas, you have one idea, like, hey, give me a bunch of different variations of this thing, and then we take the good pieces. It's like searching the internet for reference, really. You just except the reference just comes to you now, and then you go it's guided reference that comes to you, and then we go to a real artist and we say, here, take these references and now make something with this.
Here's these 100 images. I like this about this one, about this one, and then go make something cool.
Exactly.
Exactly. Cool. So why don't we switch gears and talk about maybe personally money, what pitfalls you've run into over the years. Especially, I can imagine moving from country to country, it's really hard to like set in stone, this is what I'm doing for the future, or this is how I'm saving money, or I imagine bouncing around. This is probably, I'm just projecting what you're going to say because I feel it myself, not having moved around as much as you, but that the VFX model of bouncing around to wherever the latest tax credit is or what it may be, that it's really tough to lock into a system that you can, hang your hat on for retirement.
I mean, I definitely have a whole host of, don't do what I did stories.
Right.
But I do think, we're in LA. I was a young married man with, 2 kids by the time we left, and my wife was pregnant with the third.
And
then, it cost a fortune to pack up everything, stick it in a shipping container, move it to somewhere else in the world, stay there for a year or two, do it all over again, and then do that 3 or 4 times in 4 years. It's just anything you've saved just is gone, and then you start again. And then for us, when we this is the funny story. When we went to Cape Town, we bought a house, we're like, okay, cool. Well, we're here now. We're going to buy a house. We're going to settle down. It's going to be great. We're only there for 2.5 years, and that's
back out.
But the funniest story is that we kept the house, right? So we rented it out, and we were going to maintain that thing and own it for a while. But then when we got to Canada, there's a couple of things. Firstly, we have to wire money every month back, because the rent wasn't covering the mortgage. So you're losing money every time you wire money back.
Wow.
And every year, the Canadian government asks you a question on your tax return, which says, do you own any property outside of Canada that's over 100,000 Canadian dollars? And if you do, you have to pay taxes on that thing, even though it's in another part of the world. And
that's right.
You're losing money on it anyway. You still have to claim it on your tax return.
Right.
So a few years in, we got tired of doing that. So we sold the house in Cape Town with the intention of buying a house in Vancouver, which, if anyone listening to this knows anything about the Vancouver property market, was the stupidest idea ever, probably. It's funny, though, because if you look at the Vancouver property prices, there is a point around 2015, 2016 where, the prices are going up, and then suddenly there's this hockey stick kind of
just blows up.
So we're at the bottom of the curve, and we were looking around at property prices going, well, if we sell it, we'll have enough for a down payment of a house in Vancouver. But because of the legal whatevers that the hoops we had to jump through to get the money out of South Africa into Canada, it took us about 10 to 12 months, I think, to get all the money here. And by the time it was here, so we started at the bottom of the hockey stick, and by the time we got the money here, we're at the top of we're not the top. We're not at the top yet. We're pretty high up, right? And so when we got the money here, we're like, well, we can't buy a house because we just we didn't even have enough money for a down payment. So
did it take forever because you had to do it in small chunks and over a certain period of time, or?
No, well, we wanted to do the whole thing, but we had to get forms signed and authorized and notarized and everything, and then send them to South Africa, and then they had to send it back here, and there was a bunch of back and forth, and those took a while.
I see. Right.
Just to get all our legal ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So then, but then by the time we got here, we couldn't buy a house. So, and that was actually probably when my let's just start a company, because then I can take the money that we've got here and start a company with this, and then hopefully.
I see.
Well, and then we can buy a house, which is always my joke. I'm like, I can't buy a house by working in Vancouver, so let's start a company and then we can buy a house. And now that I have a company, I still can't buy a house.
Right, yeah. The Vancouver market is a mystery to me. It's never crashed in like 30 years.
No.
And every time something comes from either the government or some exterior thing, like the housing crash of 2008, it just paused at that time and then started going up again.
Yeah.
And then they put a limit on, because it was just the reason it hockey sticked up is because they were allowing Chinese money to come in and just flood that's why there's a bunch of empty glass buildings downtown.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, now they're going to charge foreign investors 15%. Now it's going to crash. And then all it does is just, and then it goes, and it's crazy. I don't understand that place.
There's a brief pause while everyone figures out the loopholes in the new law.
You're right. That's exactly, exactly. But yeah, that place, I don't understand it. At some point, it feels like it has to come down to earth at some point. Because the thing is, you can rent there for multiples less. It's still expensive to rent.
Yeah.
But like when we moved back down to Southern California, and of course I moved 2 months too late. There was a perfect house, perfect, everything was right. We get there 2 months later, and then everything starts going parabolic when we move down here. So, but when I did move down here initially, it was like, oh, you can either rent for this much or buy for this same exact amount. It was like almost exact. And in Vancouver, that's not even close. It's like you're renting, and if you bought the house, the mortgage would be like 4 times more than what you rent for. It's crazy. I just don't understand that place.
No, I don't understand either.
But someday, I'm sure, 40 years later, 50.
Well, I think, for us, we need to just, if we ever get in a position, you just need to buy a house or an apartment. There's something somewhere else in the world that, then
right.
You rent out.
And that's what I did actually when we were up there, is I started buying down in the U.S. because that was the only way I could, and not here, of course, in California, where it's expensive as well. It was like,
right.
Boring markets like Pennsylvania,
And while you're in Canada, you have to keep each one of those under $100,000 worth of property.
How I did it, I had to form a few companies to where the money comes in a different way. I still had to file. That's the thing, but there's tricks you have to do.
You were a U.S. citizen in Canada, so you had other tax problems.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the many reasons why I moved back, was because the U.S. is the only country in the world. I think there's one other obscure one in the world, but currently the only nation in the world that hunts you down wherever you are, and you still have to file taxes no matter where you are, unless you move to Puerto Rico, and that's a different story. That's the only place you can escape if you're an American. But you also have to own a business that does really well, and then you can move there for only 4% tax. So if you're American, check out Puerto Rico. But while we were up in Canada, that was the big issue, is, okay, we're American and Canadian. How do we handle both of these structures? But I know we are bumping up on our 30 minutes here.
We are.
Why don't you we'll go to, I just have one fun little question. What's your favorite film of all time?
Oh, yes.
I can answer that. I can. Yeah.
I don't have a favorite film anymore, I don't think. But I'm generally led to I grew up in the 80s, so most of the 80s movies I'm a huge fan of.
Oh yeah.
Back to the Future series, Indiana Jones, those kinds of
Oh yeah.
fun adventure type stories, movies.
Yep.
Yeah, those are good ones. And I'm still a sucker for any well-told animated feature. That's I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Not that there's many of those these days, but
right.
Occasionally they come out and they're great.
Hey, and now you're on the way to make one.
That's the plan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of this is where you can reach out to Marc if he's hiring, if you're looking for work, or if you are a studio and need to get some amazing visual effects work over to his team. Do you do animated feature work too?
Yep.
There, like for hire? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's where you can find Marc at the Odd Studios. Actually, I didn't ask that question. How did you come up with this name? Odd.
When we were in South Africa, Jason Iverson and myself, we felt lonely because we were the only Houdini artists. So we made a forum, or we made a website, a Houdini website called Odd Force. And so, in 2016, 2017, when I registered this company, I tried all the cool names,
Right.
that shit, and they were all taken. So I was just like, well, we have a name. People in the industry know Odd Force, so we came up with
perfect,
like Odd Studios.
Already got a community attached to it in a way. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marc. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And where you can find me out there is Money-Act. You have to do the dash, money-act.com. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and I will hopefully build this channel where we can do more of these. And again, this is Money Act, where we talk about money and movies. Thank you so much, and thanks again, Marc.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right.